Hello there, welcome back. I'm Gaindy Titan here, and welcome to a video on the topic of Unearthed Arcana and some developments in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons that I want to discuss, give my thoughts on, hopefully start a discussion on. I don't know if this is going to be a regular thing, although I think I'm going to do more than one video on this particular topic, because I think it's fairly strong implications, and there's a couple of things that I want to talk about. One of them was the October release. Now, I don't regularly pay attention to Unearthed Arcana when they come out. It's kind of stuff catches my eye on Ian World. And for the last couple of years, for most of the period basically of 5th edition, I've been rather busy with other things. So 5th edition, while I've been continuing to play the game and enjoy the game, it's not been kind of a primary thing that I've been paying attention to, nor have I been waiting, shall we say, with every development with bated breath. I had a lot more enthusiasm years ago. However, I really enjoy 5th edition. I do think it has solved a lot of the problems traditionally associated with Dungeons & Dragons. While there were 4th edition is probably my favourite edition, my players didn't agree with me. And I'm quite happy with 5th edition. I do really appreciate the fairly rapid combats and things like that 5th edition facilitates. It's not without its flaws, but I don't really want to discuss them at this point in time. So what triggered my attention, shall we say? Well, recently, the first item was that I spotted the October Unearthed Arcana. Now, I only spotted it recently, so it's been out since the middle of October. And in fact, the survey for it came out earlier in the week. So what did you think of it, kind of survey? And it's a set of 3 subclasses, archetype variants, for fighter, ranger, and rogue. And 2 aspects, particularly the fighter and the rogue archetypes, really caught my attention. Because the fighter archetype was a rune knight. Essentially, they were using rune magic, giantish rune magic, you place runes on your equipment, on your armor, equipment, weapons, using smithing skills. So you gain proficiency in smithing, and you place these runes, which can be triggered to provide powers. I'm not going to argue. I mean, I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was a pretty good prestige class. But I also thought, well, not a prestige class, archetype, subclass. However, what I really thought was that it would have made a really cool prestige class. And that there is an argument for bringing prestige classes back into Dungeons & Dragons. And in fact, the designers have considered it, because I did a little bit of research. And there is a Rune Scribe prestige class already in Unearthed Arcana. It's a kind of a 5-level class concerning, again, rune magic. Has certain prerequisites, pretty stiff prerequisites for multiclassing. It uses the multiclassing rules. And I have long felt that, well, I haven't long felt, but I have felt that prestige classes probably wouldn't be such a problem in 5th edition. Prestige classes have a really bad reputation in Dungeons & Dragons, at least in certain quarters, because 5th edition had a number, 3rd edition. This goes back to 3rd edition, the whole D20 development of D&D. So it starts with Wizards of the Coast's first edition of Wizards of the Coast brought out under their own aegis. And the 3rd edition had prestige classes built in from the very start, and prestige classes in 3rd edition were intended to be originally a DM, and the gift to the DM. So you'd give out prestige classes to kind of link people into the story or link people into the background. So for instance, if the adventurers were in Cormyr in the Forgotten Realms and they had gained the favour of the crown, then the fighters of the party might become, or at least the martial characters might have the option of becoming Purple Dragon Knights, gaining a Purple Dragon prestige class and acquiring some authority, shall we say, within the Kingdom of Cormyr. Or wizards or casters might have had the option of becoming, can't remember what the wizards are called. But there's a wizard servants of the state of Cormyr as well, and they're something purple as well, I can't remember. Another prestige class of a similar nature that sticks in my mind from that period, from 3rd edition, would be with regard to Eberron. One of the nations in Eberron had a class of basically magic user, martial magic user cavalry. So they were cross-classed or multi-classed fighter magic users. And they rode into battle on phantom steeds. So they had non-standard versions of the phantom steed spell, because I think it lasted a lot longer than the base phantom steed spell and stuff like that. And they had full armor progression and full caster progression, at least for the levels of the prestige class. However, a lot of prestige classes were generic, and much more generic. And along with multi-classing in general in 3rd edition, they contributed an awful lot to the imbalances. And some of the more broken builds, we would say, in 3rd edition involved multi-classing, and sometimes involved prestige classing and cherry picking between one and the other. That was a problem, but that was a problem I think was partly due to the nature of 3rd edition. There was already inherent imbalance in 3rd edition, which increased basically as the classes grew in power, and that was inherent in the system. It was part of the design of the system, really. 5th edition is I wouldn't say it's more balanced. Well, it is more balanced, but its balance comes to a certain extent from bounded accuracy. So there's a limit to how many pluses basically you can add to your attack roll, or how much you can stack up your save DCs if you're a wizard or whatever, because your stats are bounded, and a lot of stuff doesn't provide bonuses to stat rolls, so there's no +4s and +5s and magic items providing bonuses to stats and things like that. A lot of the magic items, for instance, that do Belt of the Hill Giant or Strength or Gloves of Ogre Power and things like that, give you fixed strength numbers, going back to 1st edition almost. So why I'm discussing this is basically I'm just outlining what I thought was the problems with prestige classes and why they have a kind of a bad history. But I think there's no reason why prestige classes couldn't come back. And I thought that the Rune Knight, at least aspects of it, would make for a better prestige class. A bit like the Rune Scribe. And I think the same is true with the Revived Rogue. The Revived Rogue is essentially a rogue character. It's a rogue archetype, a subclass, where the character realizes that they had died. And they're not exactly living creatures. They're not exactly undead either. Obviously they can benefit from normal healing as far as I know and stuff like that. But they don't need to eat or sleep or breathe or any of those kind of things. They don't sleep in the normal fashion. They're actually more closer to trance. And there's obviously a backstory that you could put in if they're back from the dead and why did they die, and there's a whole campaign can be actually structured around finding out why did Fred die, why is Fred dead. But again, it struck me something that would equally well work as a prestige class. So it would give you room from, if you have a TPK in your campaign, and all of a sudden everybody wakes up again. Why did they wake up? What happened? And so on and so forth. I mean, I think there's huge story narrative possibilities here. But if it's restricted to rogues only, then obviously it's not something you could apply to the whole party. But if it was a prestige class, then everyone could do it, and they'd have to go through so many levels of it. I'd be inclined to say prestige classes, you complete them. You don't get to cherry pick them. But anyway, that's my own view and opinion. Since articles released into the Unearthed Arcana are specifically there for player feedback, they are actually straws in the wind, and they are actually indicative of things that are going on and things that Wizards of the Coast are currently thinking about. So I was thinking, why are they thinking of this thematically flavoursome stuff? What's going on? But this month they have released a very extensive Unearthed Arcana document, and it is essentially a rewrite of the base classes. It's worth, I think, multiple discussions on its own, because you could nearly go through for every class. Now, some classes are affected more than others. Barbarians, Wizards, and Rogues are probably the least affected. There are some options for them, and I will discuss the whole article more extensively in a future video. But one of the things they've introduced is proficiency versatility. So they're basically encouraging versatility and leniency in terms of build and changing builds over the course of an adventurer's day or career, depending on the class. So one of these things is proficiency versatility. So every time a character gets an ASI, an ability score increase, which comes from your various, whatever classes you're advancing in, you get a +2. You have the option of a +2 to a stat up to maximum plus of 20, and you have the or you could put +1 to 2 stats, or you could swap it in for a feat. Now there are a fairly limited number of feats in 5th edition, and I would say even a smaller number that are of any use. But this one, every time you get one of these things, in addition to getting the ability score increase, you could change a skill that you're proficient in, swap it out for a skill that's available in your class list. So you could take a background skill, for instance, that comes with the background that you possibly don't use very much, or no longer use and no longer care about, and take a class skill that might be more relevant to your current, shall we say, adventuring activities. They also have expanded spell lists for everybody to varying degrees. They've also introduced a spell versatility feature for bards, rangers, sorcerers, and warlocks. Spell versatility is where, I think, in a long rest you can swap out a spell, including cantrips. They've also cantrip versatility for clerics and druids who have access to their full list anyway, and I think they have it for wizards as well. They've introduced, there's quite a lot of stuff for warlocks, rangers. There's a massive set of developments for rangers, which, like I said, could be discussed in a video on its own, and the fighter. There's a lot of fighting style stuff. Channel Divinity could be used to regenerate unused first level spell slots. There's brought in a smite for the ranger, and effectively a smite for the cleric. And the other big one is fighting styles. So they've introduced a bunch of new fighting styles, some of which are fighter only, but there's fighting styles for pretty much everybody. So everybody gets some variant. The least martial characters that use fighting styles. So as it stands, fighters, paladins, rangers all had a fighting style. And the player's handbook, there were things like dueling, defense, great weapon fighting, protection, and 2-weapon fighting. Now, some of these were restricted to specific classes. So the full list, I think, was only really available to the fighter. The ranger had a reduced list. The paladin had some of those weren't available to the paladin as well. But now they've introduced a bunch of new fighting styles, including, say, thrown weapon fighting, so that you can draw and throw a weapon. So you can legally make 2 attacks a round with thrown weapons, because your weapon, because you can draw a weapon as part of the attack action. They've introduced cantrip fighting styles, so that rangers and paladins can actually learn cantrips from the druid or cleric school, depending on the class. So the ranger gets the druid school, the paladin gets the cleric school, and they can use that as their fighting style. So they now know two cantrips instead of a fighting style, which I can see is useful. I can see it particularly useful to the ranger, because the ranger, for instance, might want to, you could build a quarterstaff fighting ranger using shillelagh, and you have Little John from Robin Hood's Merry Men. This is a pretty extensive list, and it is definitely worth paying attention to, because this, as people have pointed out on forums in Ian World, is a substantial part of a new Splat book on its own, given the number of pages just taken up with it. So, and I think it's a very, very positive direction actually for the game, because some of the choices in the player's handbook are a little bit bland or a little bit underwhelming, particularly the ranger, for instance. Some of the ranger powers, natural explorer and natural explorer in particular is very fiddly and situational and dependent somewhat on the campaign. So are favoured enemies, and these things you've now got alternative options for that are, I think, more flavoursome and actually probably have more utility in a sort of generic, general purpose campaign scenario. Overall, I think this is a really positive development for the game, and I would certainly want to give feedback on this and actually encourage the direction in which the designers are thinking of going and whatever book they're bringing this out in. Some people regard it as Dungeons & Dragons 5.5. I don't think it's that strong a change. I would say 5.1 at best, or maybe 5.2. I do think it's a very positive change, though. I think the ability to swap out class features for alternate class features, and particularly the trend towards, a lot of them are enhancements, so they actually expand existing choices, and I think that's a very positive development, and I would certainly be all for it. And I am going to discuss in more detail the classes and the specifics in a future video. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please press like, comment, share. It really helps the channel out. And if you have not already done so, please subscribe to the channel. I will catch you all again soon. Bye for now.